LaDonna will give us the sign when we're live.
Okay. And I probably need to stay around the table, don't I, for Facebook Live? I have a tendency.
LaDonna, how much room does he have to, if he mows?
I have a tendency to want to walk around the room when I talk. Fidgety.
Would you like more?
I'm good.
You just have to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sounds
If you
good.
roam over here, I'll herd you back.
Yeah, herd me back.
Are we ready? Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Sheila Thomas, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, and we are very honored today to have our friend here with us, Senator Brad Hudson. I still sometimes say state
Brad.
rep. Yeah,
Just Brad.
Or Brad sometimes,
Brad's
yes.
fine.
He has been a good friend to us, a good friend to tourism in the state. He'll tell you about that. We've asked him to come today and just kind of give you an update on what he's been working on and a little bit about the amendment. So I will turn it over to him. What we're going to do, though, is hold questions until the very end so that he has time to cover the things that we want him to cover, and then we'll take questions. So thank you very much.
All right.
Turn it over.
All right. Sounds good. It's good to be here. Good to see each and every one of y'all. I feel like we all know one another, but for folks that might be online that might not know me, I'm State Senator Brad Hudson. I represent District 33. That's 7 counties in southern Missouri: Stone, Taney, Douglas, Ozark, Texas, Howell, and Shannon, otherwise known as God's country. So I've basically got from the Table Rock Lake area to the Current River area. I think it's the best Senate district in the entire state. I love serving you in the Missouri Senate. It's an honor to be there. I live right here in Stone County. Lived in Stone County my entire life. And I've been blessed to have the opportunity to come into the Missouri Senate at a time when we are making some very significant changes with regard to the way that the body operates. And I'm not necessarily talking about rule changes there. I'm talking about being able to function. So before I was elected state senator, the Missouri Senate was a very dysfunctional body. And a lot of people have a lot of different ideas as to how that was, but the reality was a lot of good legislation was being sent over to the Missouri Senate and it would die right there. We've been working to change that, and we are remaining a deliberative body, but at the same time, there's some things that are good for Missourians that we've been able to get across the finish line. My Senate Bill 907 is a bill that I'm particularly proud of, that I was able to get to Governor Kehoe. Actually, during session, he signed it before we went sine die. And what Senate Bill 907 is doing, or will do, is protect small business owners from these threats of abusive litigation that they'd been getting with regard to their websites not being ADA compliant. So I think we've talked about this before. I've talked to a number of groups about it. There were some business owners in the state of Missouri that had reached out because there was an attorney, I think from the Kansas City area, that was threatening them with litigation, saying, I'm going to sue you because your website is not ADA compliant. But if you want to settle for $5,000, $10,000, whatever it was, well, we can make the lawsuit go away. It was a shakedown. You can imagine, as a small business owner, what that would do to you when you're just working hard trying to make payroll, keep the lights on, do what you do in your community, and then the threat of litigation is something that was terrifying, quite frankly, to folks within my district and all throughout the state of Missouri. So we got Senate Bill 907 to the governor. We received 0 no votes on that thing. Committee, in House and Senate, floor, House and Senate, everybody voted yes. So I think that's a testament to the bipartisan work that my colleagues in my office were able to do, and also how of a significant issue this was with regard to impacting Missourians. I know tourism funding is something that this area is very concerned about, is something that is very important to this area. It's also important to the entire state of Missouri. I mean, the tourism industry impacts our state. We've got hundreds of thousands of jobs, billions of dollars of economic impact. I discovered that a bill that was passed before I was in the legislature actually had a sunset on the Tourism Supplemental Revenue Fund. And so I'd been working on even when I was in the House, and been working in the Senate to get that fund put back in statute. We were able to do that this year. The governor has signed that bill. The Tourism Supplemental Revenue Fund will be back in statute, so we'll have that in statute so the folks at the Missouri Division of Tourism can continue to work with our local communities like the Table Rock Chamber of Commerce to do what they do to help showcase this great state and make sure that we can compete with other states with regard to tourism, economic development, that sort of thing. We also have a budget situation in Missouri that was threatening to affect the tourism industry. When the tourism budget came out of the House Budget Committee, they had cut it $10 million. I worked with colleagues in the House side. Representative Brian Seitz, Representative Burt Whaley's here today. I see him over there. It was supportive of that as well. We got $2 million put in on the House side, and then I was able to get the other $8 million on the Senate side. So we're fully funding tourism once again in the state of Missouri. And we also did something that I don't know if we've ever done this before. We actually had an earmark to make sure that funds go to the local areas, to make sure that we know that there's a certain amount in the budget. Sheila's applauding that. That's a good thing. I mean, that means anytime we can bring those dollars back home and our local communities can have access to those and make decisions with regard to those dollars, much better than, Jefferson City. So there are a lot of things I could talk about today. I know we've got a limited amount of time here, and I want to be respectful of your time. I placed legislative reviews on the table here. I didn't bring as many as probably I should have. Some of you probably got these in your mailbox. Feel free to take one. If they're all gone and you still want one, get with me. I may have a few out in the car. I can see and get you some more. But there you're going to find some highlights of legislation that I've worked on. You're going to see a breakdown of where the tax dollars that you spend, where they go. There's just a lot of good information there. So one thing that we do want to talk about today is y'all have some important decisions coming up in August. And some extremely important amendments. And what I will say, I'm looking for the right word here. There is some controversy with regard to some of these amendments. These amendments would create some significant changes, and so it's no more than fair when we have amendments coming before us as electorate that we have discussion surrounding them, especially amendments like Amendment 4 and Amendment 5, which are two separate amendments, but at the same time, they would be significant changes to the way Missouri conducts business. So I just want to kind of go down through the amendments, offer you a brief explanation, and I want to leave plenty of time for you all to ask any questions of me that you might have. Amendment 1 is the renewal of a 0.1% sales tax that is already being collected. This is not an amendment that the legislature put on the ballot. This is an amendment that automatically comes up for a vote every 10 years because when this particular tax was approved, that was a part of the language. That was a part of the deal. The voters will have the right to decide whether or not to renew this tax every decade. And so that time is rolled around again. And what this particular sales tax does is it generates revenue for state parks, historic sites, and soil and water conservation. So the question before you there on Amendment 1 is, do you want to continue, do you want to authorize the continuing of this 0.1% sales tax, which generates, I believe, about $140 million in revenue, and it is split between the soil and water conservation and state parks, historic sites. So that's Amendment 1. Amendment 2, you might look at that and you might think, why are we even voting on this? Because it only affects Jackson County. Well, the reason you're voting on it is it requires a constitutional change. Because in our Constitution, we have a carve-out that right now has Jackson County with an assessor that is appointed instead of elected. If Amendment 2 passes, then Jackson County would have to make sure that their assessor is elected by the people. Jackson County actually wants this. We know this because there was an election in Jackson County and they overwhelmingly said, we want our assessor elected. Now, in order for that to happen, they need this constitutional amendment to pass. So that's Amendment 2. Amendment 4 will be the next. We're skipping 3 because 3 is in November. On your August ballot, you're going to go from 2 to 4. Amendment 4 is initiative petition reform. There are 2 ways right now in the state of Missouri that you can change the Constitution. 1, through the joint resolution process, and 2, through the initiative petition process. The initiative petition process to change the Constitution is something that we have in Missouri that a lot of states don't even have. The problem with the current initiative petition process is the threshold is no higher than for statutory changes. You can circumvent the legislature and you can change the Constitution with 50% plus one statewide vote. And we've got a lot of things in our Constitution that are problematic because of that. This is why you're seeing a lot of groups like Missouri Farm Bureau, the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Missouri Right to Life, and others that are coming out and saying we need to pass Amendment 4 to reform this process. I can give you some examples of things that are in the Constitution, things that we all, well, I say we all, I'm talking about rural Missouri, voted down, but they ended up in our Constitution because of the way the particular process is. We recognize that the Constitution is the highest document of our state. The Constitution should not be a document where you are crafting the details of policy. The Constitution should be that standard for which we can craft the details of policy within. And because this particular process is vulnerable, we got a Constitution in Missouri that's like over 5 times the size of the United States Constitution. We have got abortion language in there that does not reflect the majority of our values, certainly not the majority of the values of the people's values in the district that I serve. We have got legislation or language in there with regard to an increase in socialism that has brought a very significant, this is actually a good example of problematic language that you can have in the Constitution when you amend the Constitution with the details of policy. So in 2020, there was a ballot question with regard to Medicaid expansion. What Medicaid expansion is, it was expanding the program to provide these benefits to able-bodied working age people. That was passed. Rural Missouri voted against it, but the more urban areas voted for it. It barely passed, and so it's in our Constitution. Right now, we are about to find ourselves in conflict with federal law because work requirements have been passed at the federal level. This could potentially put billions of dollars of federal funding in jeopardy for Missouri. And this is a change that we can't make in the legislature. We can't fix this because instead of it being put in policy, instead of it being put in statute, it's in our Constitution. It is codified in the highest document of our state. That is a problem. Regardless of what you think about the Medicaid expansion issue, the conflict there is a major problem. And Amendment 4 is something that would have kept that from happening in our Constitution. It would have also kept the, I think we got something like 38 pages of marijuana law in our Constitution. And when I talk to folks, regardless of where they stand on recreational marijuana, I mean, it's almost unanimous. People agree we should be dealing with that in statute. If we're going to deal with it, we shouldn't deal with it in the Constitution. This has been frustrating to law enforcement. That's why I've got sheriffs in my district that are voting yes on Amendment 4 and publicly supporting Amendment 4 because of that issue and because of other issues that might come. We know that there's some things coming down the pike that, quite frankly, could be pretty scary. There's an initiative petition that could be on the November ballot. It is in the Secretary of State's office right now. If the signatures are verified and the requirements are met, the SOS will have no choice but to put it on the ballot. If that initiative petition passes in November, it would basically lock the legislature out of the process of amending the Constitution. I want to tell you one of the reasons that could be very problematic for my constituents and for folks all across the state of Missouri. That is, does anybody remember not too long ago there was a proposition passed to place minimum wage requirements and sick leave requirements in state law? It was passed by the voters. It was passed, thankfully, as a proposition and not an amendment. That means it was a statutory change, which Amendment 4 does nothing to change, by the way. It doesn't change statutes and citizens being able to do that. Since it was passed as a proposition, then as that was becoming law, when folks like me were hearing from their constituents, their small business owners or business owners saying things like, if this becomes law, I'm going to have to close my doors. I'm going to have to lay people off. I can't afford having to pay these benefits that the government's going to require me to pay if this becomes law. What we were able to do in the legislature was we didn't totally eliminate that proposition, but we did make changes with regard to the sick leave requirement. And so that's going to help our business owners continue to conduct business without wondering how they're going to be able to pay their help, to pay the staff that's helping them. We were able to do that. Well, guess what they're working on? They're working on a constitutional amendment that would require sick leave requirements that's going to affect business owners in that way. If we get locked out of the IP process in November and this constitutional amendment passes, not only will this problematic language be in our Constitution that our business owners will have to deal with, but at the same time, your representatives, your senators will basically be locked out of doing anything to change it. So there's a little bit about why the discussion around Amendment 4, why you have folks talking to you about how important this is. You can imagine when you look at the history of how rural Missouri votes versus how St. Louis, Kansas City, and Columbia votes, you can imagine how that vote could very likely go if those requirements that would be a burden on our business owners comes up. And this is a real possible scenario that we're seeing play out here in Missouri. That's Amendment 4. Amendment 5 is the amendment that would ask voters basically, do you want to require the legislature to craft a plan within the next 5 years to eliminate Missouri's income tax? So if Amendment 5 passes, nothing will happen right away. What Amendment 5 does is Amendment 5 says the people they're directing the legislature to eliminate the income tax, and here are the parameters with how you could eliminate the income tax. So we would have the elimination of the income tax in our Constitution. That would be a requirement. Involved in that question is, do you want to give the legislature the authority, the ability to increase sales tax and to expand the base or tax things that are not currently taxed with a consumption tax, with a sales tax, if you are offsetting the income tax in doing that. Now, one thing a lot of folks don't realize, because you hear a lot of talk about the Hancock Amendment and stuff like that, the Hancock Amendment is basically it's revenue swapping is okay under the Hancock Amendment. A lot of folks probably don't realize how much authority the legislature has right now. If we wanted to increase sales tax to lower the income tax, we have the ability to do that now. But man, I wouldn't want to do it. My colleagues, I would say a vast majority of them would not want to do it, because right now, in order to offset that revenue, our sales tax would go so high that we couldn't compete with other states, and we don't want to be in that position. So in my opinion, the main reason that the constitutional amendment, the constitutional change is needed is to tax things that are currently not allowed to be taxed under state law, so that the sales tax, as it is used to offset the elimination of the income tax, it is at a reasonable rate that allows Missouri to continue to compete with other states that are around us. Who has a question for me about anything that I've said or something else? Thanks.
I've got a couple for you. You mentioned the Hancock Amendment, the amount that they would be able to raise it. Right now, like you stated, the state does not have to. They can drop the income tax, completely drop it to zero right now, move into a separate sector. I guess what my question is, what is the highest amount that we can go up to? Because there's been multiple different variations brought out. Some are saying up to 16%.
So the question is, if Amendment 5 passes, how high is sales tax going to go? The guardrails within Amendment 5 require that the increase of sales tax has to be offset by a decrease in income tax. Even at the local level, there is a requirement of an offset of 97%. So we don't look for the state initially to gain any revenue from this. Counties and cities could potentially gain like a 3% revenue, but they're going to have to roll back tax rates 97%. How high will the sales tax rate go? Well, I'll go back to the point that I made earlier. Right now, Missouri could eliminate the income tax and increase sales tax to offset that elimination without the vote of the people, because Hancock allows revenue swaps. The whole thing about Hancock is so the government doesn't get a windfall. In order to compete with states around us, here's what I think we're going to have to see happen. We cannot have a sales tax rate that is double, triple what we got now. That's just not realistic. That's where they're going to be, I expect, taxes on certain services that are going to come into the mix. And there could be a modest increase of the existing sales tax rate as well. The reason I stand here and say that we can't have, and I'm going to say I don't see the sales tax rate being tripled, is because that is something that would leave us in a position where we can't compete with other states. That is something that is not a part of the conversation. That is something that just would be detrimental to the economy. I mean, if you've got a piece of legislation, it would have to go through the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. And so you got to make sure that when you're making these kind of decisions, you got to look at other states. It's not that we want to copy everything other states do, but let's be real here. We are competing with other states. We want people to conduct business in Missouri. I want, time goes on, my grandkids to be able to stay in Missouri and thrive in Missouri and have the ability to support their families in Missouri. So we've got to make sure that we make reasonable decisions with regard to this and eliminating the income tax. Yes.
I'm someone that I've always believed that consumption tax is a good thing, but with some caveats. But my biggest concern is that I've not heard anyone talk about, as we're adding taxes to services that are normally done, there is a part of our population, which are a lot of workers in Stony Canyon County, that right now their state income debt is fairly low because they don't make a lot of money. And now as we start to add taxes other places, do we have anything in this plan that will offset that? Because if they can't afford to live here now, and we start adding more taxes to them, we're going to have a lot harder time competing for workforce. And I haven't heard any solution to that.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and that's a good question. That's something that needs to be considered. So the numbers that I've looked at and the discussions that I've had with people, a lot of the information that is floating around, I believe the income tax elimination, definitely, if you got somebody out there, they're supporting their family, they're working 40 hours a week, they're at that stage in life, right? This is going to be a win for them. I just don't see, when you look at how much the state is going to not be taking out of their paycheck, which is basically like a pay raise, versus where the sales tax could reasonably go with everybody that I've had conversations with that's going to be involved in this should the voters direct us to do it. I think those folks, you can make an easy argument, it's going to be a win there. What you look at when you get into situations where people do not pay income tax, where could they see the benefit here? Folks that would talk to you about this plan or this potential plan would say they would probably point you to the fact that, like I said, there is a rollback requirement for local governments. So if you broaden the base, if you apply sales tax rates to things that are not currently taxed, well, not only is that going to be sales tax revenue that the state is going to be generating, which they're going to have to use to offset the elimination of the income tax, but our counties and our cities, political subdivisions, are going to be getting new revenue as well because there are things being taxed that haven't been taxed. Their requirement for rollback is 97%, not 100%. So they've got a potential for a 3% increase. That increase is something that they'd be able to keep. The 97% has to be rolled back, and they can roll back their property tax, they can roll back their existing sales tax rate. I think they can do a combination of both. I would encourage folks to read the amendment, the full text. You can go on the website. I've read it several times. I wanted to get a little refresher even last night, so I pulled it up. You can do a search. Don't just read what's going to be on the ballot. Read the full text. And it's not long. I mean, I think it's like a handful of pages, something like that. Pay special attention to the language that is in bold. That will change the Constitution. And look at it for yourself. This is a very important decision that Missourians have to make. And keep in mind, this is a constitutional amendment. This is not a statutory change. So it is and should be broad because the Constitution is where we should have policy guidelines, not policy details, rather, directions that way. So that is what I would encourage everyone to do. Yes?
Senator, just to piggyback on what you were saying, I think that the state auditor estimated that if this passed, that the sales tax at the state rate was 4.25 right now, I think.
Yeah, around there.
Around 7 to 7.5, so about 3%.
Okay, that's good.
I think also the governor's come out and said that he is not in favor and won't sign anything that increases tax on agricultural products, healthcare, or real estate, right?
Yes, yeah, good points there. So right now our sales tax base is 4.225, something like that. And I did not hear that from Auditor Fitzpatrick, but you're saying he came out and he said he expected the sales tax rate to go around 7%. And this plan would have to go through the governor's office. The governor would have veto power. And I've heard the governor myself publicly say that he doesn't want real estate, agriculture, and healthcare included in this. I think you had your hand up.
Yeah. In regards to like the time frame, what is the time frame from the time that a consumption tax would be added to when the income tax would decrease? So how long, like if you added a service tax, how long before the legislature or the tax of the decrease happens at the income level?
So that is going to be happening at the same time. This is written in such a way so it would be revenue neutral at the state. So you're not going to be seeing a situation where the government hikes up sales tax and then just keeps collecting that income tax as well to get a windfall of revenue. That the amendment has been carefully worded to make sure that is not going to happen. So as that sales tax is being applied, that income tax is going to be going down. Yes.
Brad, we've heard that you'd have to have $47,000 in services to even see more than 77 cents on $100.
Mm-hmm.
So Gary, being the person in our family, started trying to figure out what kind of services we use. I get my nails done, I get my hair done. So yeah, it's going to be taxed. But when you add your services up, I don't think I spend $47,000. If it's not working. So I look at that that's where where I feel like that our retirees who we want to protect, our retirees are not going to look at more than 77 cents until Hank and Bob and some of them and Steve, when they start getting their windfall and they have to reduce that, then whatever they've been paying on property taxes or other things are coming down. So I've read it over and over. I've done everything I can to find out because I don't want to believe what's on Facebook, and I don't. I don't want to look at talking points that someone's been handed. I don't. I want to do my own research.
Yeah.
And I did, so that's the reason I'm saying. I'm very confident now. I don't spend $47,000 in services. But I do know there are people that will go and buy goods where I'm going to tighten my belt until those 5 years are over with. And we get down to having no income tax. And I know my children are not going to leave the state to go to college or go find another job. They're going to stay here, my grandchildren.
Those are good points, and that tracks with a lot of the conversations that I've been having with people. And one thing about it, and you'll see that in the amendment when you read it, is once the income tax is gone, it can never come back. The Constitution says it has to be gone. And with regard to the sales tax, the consumption tax being used, another point that folks make is because it's a sales tax, we will be having people support Missouri in a way that they are not now because people from out of state will be coming in, they'll be paying the sales tax, and that revenue will be there as well. And also when you look at someone who is providing a service, maybe a business is providing a service that you use, those folks will not be paying income tax. So it's all baked kind of together, and it's really an interesting discussion. I think I saw a hand up over here. Yes.
Question, so by statute, you already can do this without the amendment, correct?
Not all of it.
Not all.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find interesting, so if the amendment passes, is there any language in there that actually does limit what can and cannot be taxed? Because if it comes back to the legislature, still having the ability to say, now we're going to tax this that we did not previously tax, My concern is after the fiscal conservatives we had the last 5 years, we're gonna run a $2 billion deficit, right? And they'll Kehoe said, we're not gonna do this, this, and this. Is that language in the amendment that would actually permit that? Or a legislature 15 years from now saying, hey, we got another budget deficit, we need some more, we're gonna tax this.
So you got some excellent questions there. One thing I've got to put in a plug for Amendment 4 when you talk about the budget deficit. A part of the reason we have the budget deficit is because of the constitutional amendment that was passed by IP in 2020 that fiscal conservatives like myself, I mean, I was on social media, I was out there saying, please vote no. And you know what? My constituents voted no. All of rural Missouri voted no. But because of the urban areas, we've got that, and that is a part of why we are in the fiscal situation we're in right now in Missouri. As far as 15 years down the road, this plan has to be crafted within 5 years. So you're looking at the next 5 years, those decisions are going to be made should Amendment 5 pass. And as far as the guardrails within the amendment, there's language tying it to the elimination of the income tax. The governor has said what he said about real estate, agriculture, and healthcare. Those things are not mentioned specifically in the amendment. I've had conversations with people as to why isn't that in the amendment? And the answers that I've been getting, and it makes sense for a couple of reasons. One, you don't want to have a situation where there's broad language in the Constitution that is subject to interpretation of the courts. It would be better off if the state legislature could make that in a policy change. So there will be a lot of decisions that will have to be made by your state legislature within the next 5 years if Amendment 5 passes. And that's where it is going to be. Should this amendment pass, it's going to be very important that folks have those open lines of communication with their reps and their senators about how we're going to do this in a responsible way. Yes?
As someone who has lived in a zero income tax state and a different state with a zero sales tax state, I worry about living here in Branson with the sales tax already being 10% of the people coming in. And I don't know, we already know, I've heard, we're not going to do real estate, but then I've also heard we're going to do a transfer tax, which is not really a sales tax. So I'm watching all of the ads and, all of the things, and it's just super, super confusing. And I know they're going to take it from somewhere, but where is the least detrimental place? And I don't think here in Branson that it is sales tax, because I feel like, when I lived in Montana, we had a 0% sales tax, and it was 22% in Canada, right next to us. They would come down and buy tons of stuff. I just feel like in Branson, if we tax any more sales tax, we're going to lose so much revenue for our city.
I hear you. And I will say, as a legislator that represents the Branson area, should Amendment 5 pass, then I expect we'll be working on this beginning before January, probably, but certainly when the legislature begins in January, this will be something that I would say would be a high priority for folks. I will be looking at how we can make sure and not have Branson in a situation where Branson can't compete because of the fact that there are sales tax rates that are around us that have to be taken into consideration. The decisions people are going to be making when they decide where they're going to conduct business, that all has to be taken into consideration. And right now, the legislature could eliminate the income tax by raising the sales tax. We don't want to do that, because then the sales tax would be outrageous. Because of how narrow the sales tax base is right now. So when you broaden that base, when you start taxing things that you don't currently tax, that's where you can get in a situation where you can keep that sales tax rate from getting up to a point where you're not able to compete with other states. And I, for one, and I'd imagine I have a number of colleagues that would be with me on this, we're going to be looking very closely, should Amendment 5 pass, to make sure that we don't do that to Missouri, because we have to be in a position where we can compete. I think I saw some other hands going up. Yes.
From a very small community perspective, I have the same issues and concerns as she does for Kimberly City with a budget of $4 million and a tax rate of 9.75%. Right now, where Kimberly City only gets 2.5%, even a 3% raise on that, we will never be able to pass another sales tax again for Kimberly City. So I understand services will be taxed, but that will not make up for, we get our sales tax from tourism, from our commercial industry. So we're looking at a parking stormwater tax. We're getting ready to get the results of our stormwater management plan. We have to start doing something in our community to manage our stormwater, which affects water quality, it affects our roads and streets. But we aren't going to be able to fund that without some sort of sales tax. But as soon as if this passes, and the income card, the state sales tax rate is 2% or 3%, it's gonna cut us off at the knees.
So here's what I would do if I were in your position, is I would look at the potential implications of the entire amendment, including the fact that the base will be broadened. I hear you, and this is, we're purely informational here. I kind of did push Amendment 4, but I'm publicly pushing Amendment 4. Actually, I really pushed Amendment 4. She wouldn't even kick me out for doing that. But we're having this conversation, and I think another microphone. All right, we already wore out one of them. And this is good to begin this conversation, because should this amendment pass, we have to make sure this is done responsibly. Anyone else have a question for me? Oh.
So I got a question about, you say roll back either property tax or sales tax. How does this affect the school districts? If you're saying we have to roll, you said municipalities, political subdivisions. So a school district is forced to roll back, but they don't collect any sales tax anywhere. Are they protected in this whole thing?
Yes.
Or are they going to have to roll their levy back?
School districts are protected in the constitutional amendment. They have special language in the constitutional amendment so that education will not be harmed. Good question.
Question to piggyback off of that, because I was in a meeting last week with the superintendents of 4 of our school districts. And the question I had asked them is, what is your biggest concern if Amendment 5 passes? And they said that their biggest concern was that right now they have a steady known income from our taxes. Now they're going to have a fluctuating income from taxes, because there's no way of truly knowing how much the sales tax is going to be for them. And so they're going from a known budget to a variable budget. And that is their biggest concern. And is there a way for us to figure out that to make sure that they know how much money they're going to get to be able to budget for?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So anytime that I have someone from the education community that is addressing concerns about Amendment 5 to me, what I would want to know is, have they read the language in the amendment? And I'm not saying they haven't. Maybe they have. But that's the first place we go. Let's read the special language that is in the amendment that says education is protected. Okay, having read that, where are your concerns? And so from what I'm hearing from you, there are concerns with regard to the property tax rollback. Those are decisions that will be made at the local level. But like I said, within the parameters of the Constitution, we are not supposed to hurt education. It will be in our Constitution, worded in such a way. I'm not going to try to quote it, even though I read it last night. I've slept once since then. But I would encourage you to read that again and see where the language is and what that says. And of course, the property tax, the potential for property tax cuts within Amendment 5 is not a direct thing that's done at the state level. There will be decisions made at the local
Just for an
area for that local
so
level.
their taxes is, their money only comes from, property tax, or
Mhm.
does it also come from sales tax? Is property tax?
Property tax, I'm not, somebody help me out here. I'm not aware of school districts
No,
getting sales tax
Just property
revenue.
tax.
And just property tax is, you know, that's a huge part of how our school districts set their budget. Any other questions for me about this or anything else? Yes.
Yeah, Brad, I appreciate what you're doing and everything else too. I remind us on a daily basis that I'm elderly, children are old and stuff. And I guess maybe I am, I don't really talk about my age, but I'm gonna be 76 next month. You know?
Well, happy birthday a month early, Bob.
March 31st.
All right.
And my concern for myself and people my age and people around Medicare is and I know you get very little to do, you know, the state and federal and everything else, but my Medicare costs me over $14,000 a year that I pay out for my Medicare insurance and for my supplement. And last year we got a 2.8 increase, and this year we were playing around with the 3.8 the year before because of how the economy is and everything else. But that's fine, but I already got letters from Medicare saying that my Medicare is probably gonna go up a couple more $1,000 for 2027. And so I look at that there, what you're talking about, and I've been in the medical field for 40 plus years, almost 50 years. And my income was good, but I also did my 401 and everything else to make sure that we survive. But in this area, I don't know if you know that there, but I do a lot of talking to the people in here in the city because I get out and about and visit with them. We have a lot of senior citizens, some older than me, that are scared to death of this, that they have to make decisions about their food, that they're going up their rent. Some people are moving in with their kids now because they can't afford the rent, they can't afford if they have a mortgage on their house and everything else. And they're afraid of what's going to happen here. I had 2 meetings with Governor Kehoe on virtual. There was 52 mayors a couple months ago that was there. He couldn't answer any of the questions, and like you said too, well, we'll find out in the next few years how we got to do, how we got to change things, how we got to raise things, and everything else. We're concerned, the mayors were concerned, and you know, she was there too. He couldn't answer any of our questions. Well, how's this going to affect this here? Well, we have to pass it first and see how it goes. And you basically mentioned that earlier. Well, the next few years of this crash will how do we have to raise? And we're afraid too that the legislators, in the sense that from what I hear, got us into this mess because of how they're spending, and that was coming from the state auditor who told us that at a legislative meeting that I went to in Jeff City a few months ago. And he says, because of how they're spending that you do, that we've got, like someone said, a couple of millions, you know, or more in the hole. And it's going to take, I don't know how many billions of dollars for the state to get out of the hole. But it comes down to the citizens to get that out there. And you guys are in charge of raising taxes or looking into that. But you don't have a plan yet. We asked the governor that. Well, what's your plan? Well, I don't have a plan. Well, I looked at it too, and these other mayors looked at it too. You should have come up with a plan before you throw this out to the voters. And in Kimberly City, the people that I talk to, it's going to be a no vote because it's called trust. And I talked to them about you guys and Bert. I said, well, nice guys, I voted for y'all and everything too. But it comes down to where some of the constituents in this area are afraid. Our church, Our Lady of Hope Catholic Church we go to, we feed over 500 families at our food pantry. We got the largest food pantry in Stone County. And you talk to those people. I go there at times to help out. And these people, like they said, they're poor. And these people are older than I am. And it's kind of sad that when you see people 75, 85, 90 years old that are really suffering. We have people that come into City Hall that can't pay a sewer bill of $30 because they don't have the money, they want to see how much they can pay monthly to get rid of that. Well, by the time you get done with that third, guess what, they're already $30, $40 behind again. And I'll tell you too, the people at City Hall, I pay some of these bills out of my pocket. If a lady 90 years old comes and says, Bob, I can't do this here. Oh, don't worry about it, taken care of. And I'm not bragging that I take care of some of these things, but my heart goes out to these people.
Sure.
And this
Yeah,
is
mine too.
is one of, I was told from legislators and like, City, Stone County is one of the poor communities here, and we have a lot of people that are really hurting in this county.
We do.
And that's what my point is, I'll survive, and everything else. It's going to be difficult for me the older I get, but
we've got a lot of people that are hurting in my Senate district, and my heart does go out to those folks, and that's one thing that frustrates me about that is we've got constitutional language that's passed that's requiring us to spend dollars on government benefits for able-bodied working-age people because we didn't have initiative petition in 2020. And so every dollar, most of us most everyone agrees that we want to help those who need help, who are not working age, who are not able-bodied. But when we're having to spend dollars on the folks that are working age and able-bodied, every dollar we spend there is a dollar that we can't spend to help someone. Now, there are a couple things you mentioned there that I want to touch on. One, you talked about what's the plan or why is there no plan. The plan, the constitutional amendment, first of all, I want everyone to understand that I appreciate the fact that folks want to see a plan. I would like to see one as well, but not in the constitutional amendment. I want to see it in a bill. And if there would have been a bill presented, if there would be statutory language that I could look over, I would be happy to do that. I don't think you put the details of the plan in the Constitution, but you do put it in statute. And I look forward to seeing that if and whenever I get to see it with regard to that. So that is, probably part of the reason you're hearing folks talk about how there aren't details to the plan in the constitutional amendment, because that's not where we want them. They'll have to be in statute. I'm not aware of a proposed bill or potential proposed bill setting out there with the details of the plan in it. If I get made aware of that, I will jump on that thing and start going through it as quickly as I can. So, that is the position that we are in here. And this particular amendment is basically it's a decision of Missouri voters whether you want to direct the legislature to make this change. Do you want to continue to fund your government through an income tax to the level that we are, or do you want to get rid of that income tax and replace it with a consumption tax? Something else you also mentioned is the budget situation that we're in. There are a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons for that is the Medicaid expansion issue I mentioned earlier. That's something the legislature, it's in our Constitution. We have very little to no control over that. I was a proponent of not funding that because I know that every dollar we put toward that program is a dollar we can't spend to help folks that have developmental disabilities, to help our public schools, to help with transportation infrastructure and stuff like that. Missouri didn't need that, but we got it because a constitutional amendment was passed thanks to the more urban areas of our state. Also, we had ARPA dollars that came in around COVID, and there were a lot of things. I was a proponent of, okay, if we're going to spend these dollars, which I had some consternation with even spending them, but if we weren't going to spend them, other states were going to spend them as well. Let's spend them on one-time expenditures that will help local communities, and then one time and we're done. And I've worked to do that. We've had a lot of local communities that advocate for help at the state level. But there were some decisions made that I didn't necessarily agree with, where we have put ourselves in a situation where we have depended too much on federal dollars over the years, and that is drying up. So there, it kind of in a nutshell is where we are. And I would encourage you, to look at one of those legislative reviews, look at how the budget is broken down. When you talk about where does Missouri spend money, number one is social services. We spend more money on social services than we do anything else. Number two, can anyone guess what number two is? Well, you've got it in front of you. I should have waited, shouldn't I? K through 12 education. And K through 12 education is something that we are constitutionally required to fund. That is something that we should be funding. One is social services, two is K through 12 education, and then you can go down through there and look at where the rest of your tax dollar is going. Any more questions for me about? Yes, sir. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate the question.
I'm not sure how all this happened to get there. I mean, without a plan, moving forward, I'm not really sure. It's almost like we got the cart before the horse. We need to come up with a plan first of how it's going to work out, rather than, you know, it's obviously work with City of Friendswood. We don't have property tax. Some of this tax could, you know, really affect how things go. And I agree, you know, the taxes are high. I'm not sure that people are really going to understand it, because it's like dangling a carrot out there. We're going to get all this money that we don't have to pay, but they're not looking at the fact that the state doesn't have a plan.
I hear you. And I've been in conversations in rooms where we discussed what is the plan? What is going on here? What's the plan going to be? Number one, I'll reiterate, I don't want the plan in the Constitution. The Constitution is not a document where you put those kind of details. But in the rooms that I've been talking to people like that, I have heard basically things like, well, we need to see if this is even something the voters want us to do. So that decision is going to be made next week.
One quick question. The state seemed to, during the COVID time, implement a lot of positions and jobs at the period of time that was coming through. Like you said, the hard times, everything coming in over this past 4 or 5 years. What are we doing to cut back on those positions and services that are no longer needed?
Yeah.
Because that seems to be like that's still a huge chunk that every single year is rolling into our budget.
We are working, and I think I lay out in the legislative review how we have cut the budget this year. I think we were about $4 billion below last year's budget and supplemental, which is about $1 billion below last year's operating budget. We're going to have to continue to make more cuts. I've been looking, as Vice Chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, I've been looking at areas in the bureaucracy where there are FTEs that should not be there. That is the first place that I think we need to go, where we can make cuts in the bureaucracy where my constituents will not be affected. And the reality is we are doing that, and there's still more work to be done though, but that has been a priority, and we have cut the budget, and we will continue to do that. And like I said, there's some details in your legislative review. I think Sheila's got a stack of questions for me. Okay.
I do. Some have been answered, but this one, I'm going to read the question, and then there's a kind of a follow-up question from Kelly Rogers, the superintendent of Crane. Hi, Kelly.
Hey, Kelly.
So schools are already faced with budget shortfalls from state not being fully funded. How can we ensure schools do not take a bigger hit? Some figures say Crane schools stand to lose $850,000, which is a huge hit to a small rural school. You've talked a little bit about that. And then we sort of followed up with, do they get property tax? Do they get sales tax? She says they get Prop C money. I fear a vote will keep it frozen. I'm not familiar with what that means. So.
Okay. Well, what I would say, Kelly, is in the constitutional amendment, I would encourage you to read the language that protects school funding. At the same time, I'm happy to have any conversations. I mean, you know how to get a hold of me. We've had conversations before about how this could affect your funding or any other decisions that are made at the state legislature. Because in reality, this is a tough time that we are in. The state of Missouri is having to make some tough decisions to balance our budget. Our school districts are having to make some tough decisions to balance their budgets. Our families, constituents that I serve, are having to make tough decisions at home to balance their budget. We do not want to do anything to hurt our schools. We got some great schools in Senate District 33. It's one of the best school districts in the entire state. School districts that are a model for other districts in the state. And we want to make sure they're protected. And there's language in Amendment 5 to protect them. But if anyone thinks that language is insufficient, certainly if Amendment 5 passes, I would love to hear what kind of language you would like to see put in statute to make sure that we codify that we're not going to hurt our public schools.
Okay, here is a question from Karina Branson-Jones. Do you have any sources for the numbers that eliminating income tax and adding more sales tax and adding more sales tax on goods and services will benefit working families and those who are struggling. Where would be a good place for people to calculate that information? Do you have a thought on that?
So I want to make sure I understand the question correctly. The numbers that I've been given, and I've tried to be very purely informational here, where we think the sales tax is going to be, who this is going to benefit. With regard to the working families, what I would encourage folks to do is look at your paycheck, look at how much the state is taking out of your paycheck. Some of our sources could be right here today, and I don't know if the folks on Facebook Live can hear the audience questions, but I know Kathy had some things to say about some numbers she has run. I've had conversations with the state auditor. I've had conversations with legislators in Jefferson City. We've looked at how much revenue is generated by the current sales tax and how much will be generated should the base be broadened and this sort of thing. And so the information that I have given you today is based on a number of conversations with those kind of folks that I've been having, and based on what I know about, Missouri income tax and how much folks are paying versus the amount of services that folks would have to pay based on a sales tax rate similar to what the state auditor has mentioned.
Okay. I don't know if we actually know this number because of the potential rollbacks and that kind of thing. This question says, how high can our other taxes go up to cover the loss of revenue through income tax?
So the reality is, right now, without a constitutional amendment, your sales tax could go sky high to make up for the elimination of the income tax, because Hancock is all about preventing a revenue windfall for government. Hancock is not about preventing revenue swaps or revenue shifts. The reason, in my opinion, the number one reason for this constitutional amendment, should the voters want to eliminate the income tax this way, is so that the base can be broadened, so that a reasonable sales tax rate can be applied to more things rather than a sky-high one that nobody wants applied to the existing base.
I think the other two questions have been answered.
Okay. All right. How much more time do we have? Are we?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Wow. I mean, I'm here for as long as y'all want to keep me. Yes.
We beat 5 up and down and around, but I got a question on 4 that I've been asked. I don't know how to answer it from some folks. We've got a lot of stuff in our Constitution that does not belong there.
Yes.
And that's happened because St. Louis, Kansas City have controlled those votes.
Columbia. Sometimes a little bit of Springfield, sometimes not.
With this new way of doing it, all of the districts have to pass 50% plus 1, right? To make it. So if those areas controlled all of these changes and we go to this, how do we start cleaning up our Constitution, removing some of these things? Will those same areas, won't they still control it by, if they fail in those 3 districts, then the change wouldn't happen?
That's a good question. And it's important to note that Amendment 4 only affects one process with regard to this, and it is the constitutional IP process, which I affectionately, tongue-in-cheek, call the leftist billionaire-led process. That particular process, we're going to set the bar high for that, as it should be. Right now, the bar is, once you get it on the ballot, the bar is half the state plus 1 voter. That's all you need to do to amend the Constitution through that. What Amendment 4 says, if you've got to get half of every congressional district plus 1 voter, then you can amend the Constitution. That would require they win rural Missouri, and that would fix a lot of our problems. Now, with regard to, for example, you didn't mention the pro-life issue, but the pro-life issue is a good example of the situation you're talking about here. We had in 2024 an amendment that was passed that has made Missouri the most pro-abortion state in the entire country. It's in our Constitution. Now, Missouri is not. That is not reflective of the citizens of Missouri. Yet it's in our Constitution because of the flawed process that I mentioned. We can fix that through the joint resolution process. That's going to be Amendment 3 that will be on your November ballot. So we can still, through the joint resolution process, which means you got to go through the legislature, which that's where the folks that The out-of-state billionaires are going to be more likely to be able to affect change anyway, because, I mean, you're not going to have the people, you're not going to have a California billionaire come to this event and speak to you. That's probably, they wouldn't want to, even if they were invited, but your senator is going to be here when he can. Your representative is going to be here when he can. And so that is how I would say regular Missourians can affect the process. If you get it through the legislature, which means that representatives and senators from every corner of the state have the opportunity to weigh in on it, means there are public hearings that the public is invited to, that citizens can testify at. All this has to take place before it gets on the ballot. Then if you get it on the ballot, the threshold remains the same. So this only Amendment 4, the only constitutional process that it affects is the IP process. Yes?
And that's how you've been able to get the freeze for citizens that are of age, that their property tax doesn't go up. And that's how you've been able to protect us on a lot of things, because we elect y'all to go through all this stuff, and then you do it. Where citizens petition is hiring anybody to come in and tell somebody to sign something, and they have no clue. They're getting paid well to get those signatures. And then all these ads that we're having to put up with right now are coming in to those particular larger districts that tend to be not voting like we do down here. So I'm sitting here going, why not stop the IP? And why don't we depend on the people like Brad and our other elected officials to make decisions for us, because they come and stand in front of us like today and ask us what we're hearing. So that's why I'm supporting to get rid of IP. I'll just say that. And I think that's what we're doing on this Amendment 4.
Well, I appreciate that, Kathy. And I will say, if we haven't made this clear earlier, I want to make it clear now. Amendment 4 doesn't change the citizen-led IP process. If the legislature passes a law in Jeff City that you don't like, through the proposition process, by getting something on the ballot that way, you can change it with 50% plus one voter in the state of Missouri. All we're talking about is these constitutional changes, which it's no more than fair when you change the highest document of our state, that every region of our state should have a seat at the table. And I am not speaking ill of folks in Kansas City and St. Louis. They are Missourians like we are, but their economy is much different. Their values are different. And it is frustrating to me, and has been for years, when they have all the power with regarding to amending our Constitution through this. So I am so glad that we've got something on the ballot that will give you the opportunity to say, no, if you're going to change our Constitution, you got to win rural Missouri as well.
Brad, just real quick, what are some of these other services they would be looking at taxing? Because I'm trying to figure this out. He says no tax on real estate, agriculture, healthcare. Still concerns on that because that's not written. And that doesn't guarantee us in the future. What happens if he doesn't get reelected? What happens if our current House of Representatives, senators, things like that? There's a lot of change coming in that position. If they don't have the same mindset that Kehoe has, he can sit here and say that all he wants, but there's nothing protecting that. So what are these other services that he is looking at to make up that windfall?
So I want to make sure we're very clear. Thane's question is not about Amendment 4. We're back on Amendment 5 now. So Amendment 4 is initiative petition reform. Amendment 5 is income tax elimination. And your question has to do with services. Here's what I know. We know what the governor has said publicly about those, about agriculture, real estate, and healthcare. We know what the text of the constitutional amendment says. We also know that the base is going to have to be broadened if we are going to replace income tax revenue with sales tax revenue. We know that there's a 5-year window that the legislature has to come up with a plan that will be subject to the governor's veto. Within that 5 years, the plan has to be crafted. And I, for one, should Amendment 5 pass, like I've tried to do with everything, all these big issues, I've tried to make sure that I have a seat at the table, because that is when you are best represented, when your legislator has a seat at the table. So I'm going to be there when those decisions are made, when they're having those conversations, and I'm going to be open to whatever folks may have to say about certain services that they feel like don't need to be taxed, or they would be concerned if taxes are levied on them. Yes.
I think this has probably already been answered, but maybe I'm missing something. And it could fall under social service or education, but where does daycare, special needs schools, things like that fall in? Does this turn out to be a positive for them, or is it going to be, what's your feeling in that area?
So you're talking about Amendment 5 and how daycares may be affected.
Yes.
That is an interesting question, because that is a service, and childcare is a service. So, but you've got to. So let's. And I'm just throwing out a hypothetical here, and I don't want to get too far off base, but I like to having these conversations, right? So let's say that there is a sales tax levied on that particular service, but also the individual that is availing themselves of that service is not paying income tax. So calculating what that person would make in their paycheck, because the income tax hasn't been taken away, versus the potential application of the sales tax to that service would be something that I would encourage folks to do the math on. And please, when you do the math, do reasonable math. And I know folks in this room are going to do that, but do reasonable math. Don't take your figures from all of these ads and all these things on Facebook. Read the amendment, have real conversations with folks, and look at reasonably where this could end up and how it might affect you.
I've
Yes.
done that, and there's no way that it works that I don't pay more if it increases the sales tax. And therefore, if I just pay it varies.
Okay.
Varies, but I always pay more.
I want to commend you for doing the math. I want to commend you for being an educated voter. What we need folks to do is we need them to make decisions based on what the amendment says and based on their own research. And I'm not here to tell you how to vote. So you're going to tell me what the legislature needs to do next year with this. So anyone else have any more questions for me?
I do.
All right.
Let's go back to Amendment 4.
Okay.
So several years ago, when I was a part of Leadership Missouri through the Missouri Chamber, we got to visit the Secretary of State's office. And they talked about the amount of initiative petitions that they processed and all the things that go into that. I don't remember the number. Do you remember? Do you have any knowledge of that? It seems like I remember it being us being shocked and being like, oh my gosh. They said that they spend so many % of their time on that, and it was just crazy.
Yeah, that's a good point. And off the top of my head, I cannot give you a number for sure. I could guess, but I'm not going to do that, because just as I do that, it wouldn't be.
I know. That's why
But you are making a very good point there. Anyone who cares about the future of Missouri would be greatly concerned if they could see the number of potential constitutional IPs that are making their way to the Secretary of State's office right now.
Because some of them are crazy.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. And we're paying those people to process those.
Somebody said 128.
Okay.
And we're talking about our Constitution, folks. We're not talking about just changing law.
Right.
We're talking about the highest document of our state. And we're talking about some radical ideas that do not reflect the values of the majority of Missourians. But if they can get that on the ballot, if they can circumvent your elected officials, get that on the ballot, and then run a campaign like they did for the abortion campaign in 2024, what they said is, we've got to pass this amendment so women can get the health care they need. That was a lie. How often do you just hear me say it right outright like that? Well, I'm saying it right now. That was a lie. I was in the legislature when we passed the pro-life bill in 2019. There was nothing in Missouri law that kept women from getting the health care that they needed. But they said that because they were wanting to scare people into voting for Amendment 3. And the opposition to that abortion language was outspent like 10-1. We even heard testimony in committee that there was money from out of the country that was spent trying to promote that amendment that just barely passed in the state of Missouri. While you all, and I say you all talking about my constituents, the majority of my constituents voted against it, but Kansas City, St. Louis, and Columbia, even Springfield voted with us on that. But Kansas City, St. Louis, and I believe Columbia, they voted it in, and here we are. Thank you for that question.
You're welcome. I have another comment from Kelly Rogers at Crane.
Okay.
And this, you'll laugh at this because she talks about Senate Bill 3, property tax becoming frozen at 2024 levels, and that will potentially damage the schools. We had that discussion, and I didn't like it when you all did that. I said, leave us alone, let the local level do their thing. So you may want to, Kelly, you two may want to have a conversation about this offline.
Yes, that'd be great. Kelly, reach out to me. There are a couple of things I do want to say about SB 3 since it was brought up. One of the things that frustrated me the most about the legislature when I got there was toward the end of session, we would have these large omnibus type bills come through. There would be some stuff that I didn't like, some stuff that I did like, all in one bill. And I would vote yes or no on the whole thing because I wasn't going to. Some folks vote present. You don't see me voting present unless it's like a quorum call or conflict of interest or something that doesn't happen that often. Because I feel like you want me to make a decision. I'm up there to make a decision for you, make sure your voice is heard. And so you have to weigh these things out. Does the good outweigh the bad? There was a lot more in Senate Bill 3 than just that issue. One thing that was in Senate Bill 3 was funding for people that had, help for people that had experienced storm damage. The 33rd Senatorial District got hammered with storms not long after I became their senator. These folks needed help. They were able to get help through Senate Bill 3. Also, the property tax component goes to a vote of the people. And that is, at the end of the day, that's who all elected officials vote for, or who elected officials rather work for. They vote for us, we work for the people. And so that was a decision that was to be made at the local level. If the people vote for it, then it's something that need to be implemented. The people didn't always vote for it in every county. I'm thinking of one county in particular that's in my Senate district where you had certain elected officials, certain individuals getting out and telling folks this is how we think it's going to affect our community, and they voted it down. So there's just a couple of tidbits of Senate Bill 3 that you might not be aware of. But yeah, Kelly, I'm happy to visit with you about that or anything else.
This isn't a question necessarily for you,
okay,
but I'm going to address it. This question is from Jody Roberts, and she asks, what are the plans for affordable housing? So many homes in this area are bought by companies for short-term rental. Local residents cannot compete for housing. Jody, we know this. If you would like to look up launchstonecounty.com, you will see a plan that the chamber developed a few years ago. It's a 5-year strategic plan. One of the major components of that plan is for housing. We are actively working on that with many others, including a coalition called ourstonecounty.org. So I would encourage you to look up those the information on those websites. We know it's a problem. We completed a housing study at the end of 2024. We know the shortage that we have. We know the type of housing that we need. It's just a challenge to find the dollars to handle the infrastructure cost to put in what we would consider attainable housing for our workforce. But it is actively being worked on. So I encourage you to look up that information.
All right.
You're welcome.
Well, if I knew you were going to do that, you could have handled all the questions for me.
No.
Anything else for me?
Brad, thank you for taking the time to come today and answer questions. I've had questions for weeks about this, and so I appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Answer questions because there are a lot of people out there that still have questions on 4 and 5.
They are, and it's important decisions going to be made very soon. Thank you all for being here today. It is an honor to serve you in the Missouri State Senate. May God bless each and every one of you. If there's anything else I can ever do for you, don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you, Table Rock Chamber and Sheila, for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
God bless you.
Thank you for coming.
Good to be here.